Hello, and welcome to a special School for Good and Evil moment here for the North Texas Teen Book Festival Educators Day. I am here with two actors, amazing actresses from the School for Good and Evil movie. We've got Rosie Graham, who plays
Hello.
Millicent in the School for Good and Evil movie, and we have Emma Lau, who plays Kiko.
Hi.
And I'm super happy to be here with you two. You two are amazing actresses, people, humans, readers, and I'm just so glad that everyone gets to meet you, even virtually, in this very strange year. But first thing I want to ask you guys is, when did you first start getting into books? Like, when did you first start reading?
Uh,
Ooh,
well,
you
my
go first.
mum is actually a librarian,
Mm.
so it was forced upon me from as soon as I came out of the womb, I'd say, really. Um, but which has been great. Like I was so lucky that my mum loved to read to me when I was growing up as well. So just all of my sort of like my earliest memories are of my mum reading to me before I went to bed and reading things like Roald Dahl and then I guess in my mind I get confused about the ones that she read to me, and then when I started going over to reading myself, but just that's like sort of my earliest memories, my mom reading to me.
Oh my God, Emma, how about you?
I think again, yeah, from young. My dad is a big reader. All like he has countless books,
Mm.
and I think all me and my sisters were named. Actually, three out of four of us are named after like Jane Austen characters because there's Harriet, Charlotte,
Oh,
and me, Emma.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
God,
just from
that's
young.
wild.
that's so
Um,
sweet.
Do you have a memory of a favorite book as a kid that you would just read again and again, or like, that one really stuck out to you?
I remember Chinese Cinderella. I really enjoyed Chinese Cinderella by Adeline Yenma. It was like kind of like an autobiographical book, but it doesn't feel like you're reading nonfiction. Um, but yeah, no, that was really nice to kind of see and kind of navigate her world through like a young girl's eyes.
And how about you, Rosie?
I actually remember reading that book too. And yeah, a fantastic book. But my favorite book when I was younger was Harriet the Spy by Louise Fitzhugh. And I was obsessed. I wanted to be I still want to be a spy. And I loved the book and then I watched the film, but that book I read again and again and again.
I loved Harriet the Spy because she had a bad attitude, and I felt like I had a bad attitude for most of my life. So
Yeah,
I,
and she was so cool. Like, she would keep her diary. So then I wanted to keep a diary and like spy on people. And she was just like a bit of a badass. Like she was such a cool girl.
cool girl, totally. So the awesome thing is that now you guys are an adaptation of an actual book. Um, and kids all over the place have read The School for Good and Evil, and now they're gonna see the movie. Was it strange to like, when you were preparing to do the part to like read the book and then know that you were gonna be in like an adaptation of an actual book?
I feel like what the sort of joy of reading is that you create the images of the world, the imagery is given to you, but then you visualize it. So I feel like it was strange meeting the cast and like finding out who the cast was. So as I was reading it, being like, okay, Hort, but that's Earl, and like Hester, but
Mhm.
that's gonna be Freya. So I already had like, I guess when people like a film is made and people will then who read the book after they've seen the film do the same. But we had some of that, but then it was like I'd read it just before we started filming. So then how I imagined like the Wish Fish Pond. Then when we went to film it, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is it. So some things I felt like I got really wrong, and then some things
Mhm.
were sort of right. And that's I guess like what was so exciting about all of it.
100%. Emma, how about you?
Yeah, no, I think like Rosie was saying, I think sometimes you interpret and you imagine something that you're reading and you're like, and then you get to set and you're like, whoa, Paul and Soman and the set design, they imagined it way better than us.
Yeah.
But I think like reading the characters and knowing that, there's such a big fan following of these books and these characters that you've created, like I think there's some pressure of wanting to do it justice and kind of doing it right. But I guess you can only trust your instincts and kind of follow what you think and what you feel and what you can give to the character because they're so lovable.
Well, I think it's funny because I think even as an author, it's you start to realize that even me, every single reader who reads it, we all have our own version in our head. And that's the version, in a way, that's the official version, right? It's the version that we make for ourselves in our own brain of any book we read, whether it's Harry Potter or School for Good and Evil or Percy Jackson or whatever. We have our version. But with a movie, you finally have a version that you can actually share with friends and family. Do you know what I mean? It might not be the version in
Yeah.
your head, but it's a version that you can be like, here. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think I try to tell kids sometimes that it's not the official version, the movie version. It's just a version, and the official version is the one that you get when you actually read it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah,
What
that's
are
a really nice way.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead. No, no, no. Go
No, I
ahead.
was just saying that's a really nice way to put it, in a version that you share.
Mhm.
That's a really nice way to think about it.
And then you can also get people to read it. So like, let's say you're trying to convince your friend to read it, and your friend is like, I don't read books, right? Or I don't read books that are longer than 30 pages. Then you can be like, well, watch this movie. And then if it, then you can sort of use it as kind of the entry path into, getting someone to read. But
Yeah.
I think first, why don't we talk a little bit about your characters in the movie? Do you guys want to tell us each who you play and what the character is like? Rosie, let's start with you. Yeah, let's start
Yeah.
with you, Rosie.
I'm playing Millicent of Maidenvale, and she's a very fashionable, but they all are, Scottish student in the School for Good and Evil. She's an ever girl, so very good. And one in the sort of group of like one of Beatrix's girls, I think she's a real do-gooder and takes like the school very seriously and is very ambitious. Sometimes I think takes herself a bit too seriously and can be a bit uptight, but she is like one of Beatrix's girls and wants to like support her and support the cause.
And Beatrix is probably the greatest rival to Sophie, who is the School for Good and Evil is about Sophie and Agatha's friendship. Sophie believes she's a princess meant to go to the School for Good. Agatha believes she's a witch meant to go to the School for Evil. And when Sophie ends up at the School for Good and Evil, expecting to be a princess and sort of win Prince Tedros' heart, who's the son of King Arthur, Beatrix and her girls kind of stand in her way as kind of her rivals, I would say. But Millicent is like the nice one. She's not like Beatrix is a little more, Regina George mean girl.
Yeah, she's fiery. I think that's the thing, and that's why sort of Millicent and Kiko get on quite well. That Kiko is the real lovely one of the group, and when maybe there's a bit of nastiness going on, I think Millicent would still not want to go against Beatrix, but more stay back with Kiko and try and find a slightly kinder approach.
That's a really good way of putting it. Emma, tell us about Kiko.
So I'm Kiko. I play Kiko and Kiko of Neverland. She's part of the School for Good. She's an Evergirl, and she really wants to be part of Beatrix's gang. She's Beatrix is the Regina George of the School for Good. So she really wants to be part of the popular girls, but she's not mean. She's really lovable and she's so kind. So when Agatha comes in as kind of an outsider and someone who really does not fit in the kind of the shape and cutout of an Evergirl, she kind of befriends her and she's nice to her, and she gets on with Millicent because Millicent's not fully mean, but we're just a bit conflicted, being young adults and wanting to be popular as well and following the crowd, but also we know we're nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, also Kiko, and I'm sure this will be explored more in future sequels. Kiko also has an unrequited love crush on one of the boys who.
Oh my god, yes, how could I forget? She is obsessed with Tristan, beautiful Tristan, and she just wants to go to the ball with him.
Only there's a problem, and it's that Tristan doesn't seem to have much of an eye for females.
Yeah, there's a bit of unrequited love there. A hopeless cause.
Classic case of middle school, which happens so often. And my niece
Yeah.
and nephew tell me about it all the time. They're like, this happens all the time. Like a girl likes a boy, and it's so obvious that he is gay. I'm like, um, so this is your first sort of big budget fantasy movie, and it's a very, very large scale movie in every possible way. What was it like just showing up on set and to start filming with the costumes and the craziness and everything? I know a lot of kids are watching right now and teachers thinking, you know, what's it like to just go from your ordinary life into a big, huge movie set?
It was just so magical. Like the whole experience was pretty surreal, especially because it was happening during the pandemic, where it was like quite strict uh, lockdown still, and like so we were so lucky that because it was such a big film, we also had such like a COVID department, and it was even possible. So to be doing anything was lucky. Never mind getting to like turn up. And just every time there was a new set, it was just like stepping into a different universe. Because like you've said this before, it wasn't just a set, it was the world around you. The costume, like from my first fitting, I just sort of had no idea what to expect. Because again, I'm like, I've got quite a good imagination, but I think the creators of this film have the best. So my expectations were always just totally exceeded. And I just knew it was going to be special. And I just continued to be like, oh, but this is really big. This is very special. This is just so magical.
And they also gave you a pretty cool red wig, right? Because Millicent is sort of famously red-haired in the books. So how did they do your hair for it?
So at first, my agent called me and they were like, and she was like, "How do you feel about possibly dyeing your hair?" And I'm a bit of a wimp, and I've always thought I'd love to go ginger, but I'd need a good excuse. And I was like, "Well, this is a good excuse, absolutely."
Yeah.
Then it came that it would be a lot of upkeep and maintenance, and not great for my hair. So they decided to give me a wig. So it was like 2.5 hours in hair and makeup every single day with the wonderful Jessie who was doing my hair and makeup. And it was just like that 2.5 hours actually, and transforming into Millicent, I think really helps. It's such like a blessing in terms of being an actor, because I looked like a different person. No one recognized me.
I didn't
So I told,
recognize you at all, you know?
yeah. And then I would see people after when I was out of the wig, and they'd be like, "What's that?" And they'd have to hear my big loud Scottish accent to know it was me. Um, so it was amazing. I loved being a redhead. I definitely feel like I felt more fiery. I felt more sassy. But it was just, yeah, incredible. I'm excited to see it because I've now just been a boring blonde again. So I'm excited to go back to my redhead days.
Kids always ask. It's funny because they're always like, oh, like actors have to constantly change their hair and stuff. And I was like, if they actually did have to use their own hair for everything, it would be impossible because it can't grow, it can't move. You need the control of it. Otherwise, every time you watched a movie, they would look completely different in every scene.
Yeah. But there's so much wizardry involved in creating a film. Like it was, I think it was real human hair, which is a bit scary, but it looks so realistic, and
Oh,
everything
yeah.
about the sets was technically, fake, but so real.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Emma, how about you? What was it like sort of inhabiting the world?
Oh, I think Rosie just encapsulated it with magical, amazing. Like you'd walk onto set and you're like, wow, this is a real life palace, and then you're in the costumes, and oh my gosh, I'm a real life princess. Like I was like, I've never worn something so beautiful. Um, and I think, like Rosie said, you just felt so blessed to be in work and kind of blessed to kind of be able to touch each other during COVID. Because yeah, that was during strict lockdown. But obviously we were kind of treated as a bubble. Um,
And you were
and
staying as a bubble together too. I mean, that was the cool part. When I visited set for those, few weeks, you guys were staying at a hotel that was basically your hotel. No one else was there. And so you guys had the run of a castle. It was basically like a palace on an estate. And it felt like its own school. So Emma, I'm just curious what that felt like, just sort of like living together and being together 24/7. You know what I mean?
I think that was part of what made the experience so special, because I think, when you are filming, sometimes it can be so, you go back to your own accommodation, or you go back to your own house, so you don't really get that kind of social element of it, where it kind of felt like we were in a real life School for Good and Evil. And actually, because it was filming also over Easter, so we kind of did like an Easter hunt together,
Mm.
where we did the School for Good and the School for Evil. We did teams, and I can't even remember who won and who
I
lost.
feel like, was it Ever and Nevers?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Yeah, we did,
Nevers.
and the Evers won.
the Evers
I'm
definitely
very
won.
competitive.
I hadn't met you guys yet, but I remember when you guys did win, I got like 5 DMs being like, just so you know, the Evers won. As if like I'm supposed to take sides.
I've got a really funny picture which I can't wait to like post when I'm allowed to, and it's of the Nevers when they lost, and they're formed like this gang outside the doors of the hotel, like Kit's at the front, and his face is like priceless. He's like, they're all so furious.
Well, tell us a little bit about, because for those people who haven't read the books yet, so if you go to the School for Good, you're an Ever. If you go to School for Evil, you're a Never. And you guys obviously are part of the Ever Girl group. What were the Nevers like in general? What was the vibe over on the evil side of things?
They were horrible. No, the thing is, because we were all living together and it was like a big boarding school, we got to know each other before we even started. So already there was a good bit of, cross contamination between the Evers and the Nevers. So like some of my, like we were all such good friends, and I was so close to the other girls, but I also got really close to the witches, Freya, Caitlin, and Demi. And then it was really nice because we'd get to just hear about each other's days, because mostly we weren't working to like actually on set
it was
together.
separate. It was separate.
Yeah. So, and you'd be like sort of envious because they were so cool and dark, and then they'd be like, oh, but we're jealous of your beautiful dresses and stuff. So it was so nice that we got to share the experience because we were living together, so we weren't left out of the other worlds.
Yeah.
I think it was also the idea of how different the sets and costumes were for the two sides, because I think that was always the fun of writing School for Good and Evil for me, was that it felt like 2 books in one. Every time I could go to the School for Evil in the writing, it felt like I could put on a completely different way of writing, tone, characters, everything. And then you go to the School for Good and it would have a completely different feel. And I felt like it was the same for you guys, because you really were filming on different days most of the time. There were very few times. I'm trying to remember the scenes where you guys would be together.
I think there's one scene where I think we had one day of filming where we were all together.
No, because the assembly, that was like 2 weeks.
Yes, it was
yeah.
That was intense.
It was the welcoming. You guys are seated separately. How about when you did when you guys go into the Blue Forest? There's all these scenes in the Blue Forest where you guys are in classroom training. Was that still separated by school?
That was separated in the Blue Forest, yeah, because that was again when it was like the Evers have got lucky this time, because we got to go away for a couple of nights to the borders in Ireland. And it was like an actual rainforest we were filming in, to the point that one of the days there was 8 hours where it just was like torrential rain and we couldn't film at all, and we were sort of hiding under these tents and everyone was drenched. And we were like, we're lucky, we're staying in this lovely hotel in the borders and we're in a rainforest. But then also we were like under like in a rainstorm for hours and hours and hours, where the Nevers were warm in the hotel.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna ask you. Like, Emma, like people think filming is just like pure glamour and everything's like you're just being fed champagne and chocolate all day long by people, and that's not. From what I saw, it is brutal work, like all day long, every day.
Oh, well, I mean, it is so fun. But then what we did not enjoy was our 2:30 and 3 a.m. calls.
Yeah.
They were hard.
I mean, you
know what? It just takes so long to look beautiful.
Was that what it was? You guys had to get up. There were days where there were like 3 a.m. pickups, and it wasn't because you had to get into hair, makeup, get into the costume in order to start filming really early, right?
Yeah, I think because there were so many people to get ready. So I think the Evergirls and also the Never Girls, but then obviously we filmed on different days, would have the earliest calls just because we take the longest to get ready, apparently. And then the guys would also have to get ready after that. So then you just wait a bit, and so you try to plan your nap, of once you've gotten ready. But you kind of have to sleep upright so you don't ruin any of your hair.
Yeah, you guys were real troopers. A few last questions. One, what scene are you most looking forward to people seeing in the movie? If you had to sort of pick a scene.
Ooh.
It's so hard. They're all like flashing from my mind, the days that I loved.
I
Um,
just
I,
can't.
re- I remembered another day, um, and it was like just we sort of did all of the lunch and dinner and all the times in the dining halls for together,
Yeah.
and that's again when we were together, but on the other side of the road, the classroom. And there was a scene where we had like the food fight, like we sort of
Oh,
start.
you guys had a food fight. Yeah, a big
Yeah,
giant food fight.
yeah. And that was just, we had so much fun because we just didn't think that they were gonna let us just go for it. And they really did. They were sort of just like, go for it. And we all really did because it was like our first chance to sort of like interact with the
Yeah,
other sides. So we all just sort of went wild. So I think that's such a fun scene. But there's so many, like the Blue Forest as well and the beautification class. Like there's so many I can't wait to see.
me too. I still haven't seen the movie because I'm waiting until they put because I feel like I want to see it when it's done because
Yeah.
otherwise the fun won't be there. So I'm just waiting until the effects are in and all of that sort of stuff. Emma, how about you? Any scenes really jump out
Yeah,
at you?
well, that's the one I was talking about. I think the one where like I thought we were all together then just because we actually got to just touch each other and like act
Yeah.
with each other and Rosie Millicent went for it in that fight.
I
You'll see.
am not surprised.
Um, and oh, so the wish fish scene that was
Yeah.
amazing to film outside. The weather was beautiful, and working with Kerry was amazing just to
That was
watch
Kerry
and learn
Washington's
her do her
first.
craft.
Yeah, that was one of our first days on set, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that will be a beautiful scene, and also that has so many effects and cool things that I think are
yeah.
coming. Yeah, every scene has so much
Mhm.
insanity. I've only seen I would say about 10 minutes of it, and everything just looks incredible. Okay, so my two last questions for you are: if you had to convince a kid who knows nothing about the School for Good and Evil, but is thinking maybe about reading the book, how would you convince them to read the books?
I would say that no matter where they're from, what they're like, what they love, what they hate, there'll be something in it for them because it's such a huge world, and as you said, just like you said, writing for the nevers compared to writing for the evers, there's such a range of people in it and characters in it and ethnicities and personalities and love stories. There's so many different strands to the story that there's something for everyone. And on top of that, it's just quite magical.
I'm gonna send you on tour in my place now to convince everybody. Emma, how about you?
Um, I think I think if you're looking for something so like new that's kind of based on everything we know about all these fairy tales. We've grown up with them, but if you want to look for like a kind of a melting pot of all these fairy tales that's created, like you've created something so magical and so fantastical, and yet very modern, and there are colloquialisms that are so funny in it. And I think, like Rosie said, these characters are so extreme, but they're so real, and there's essences of everyone in them. Like we all know a Sophie, or
Mm.
we all secretly have a Sophie in us.
Hmm.
It's very relatable and just a fun read.
Some of us have a bigger Sophie than others.
Or we
Yeah.
all have big Sophies in us, but it's how much we let out.
100%. And my last question for you guys is, kids these days are so busy with TikTok and TV and all that stuff that sometimes they can look at books and be like, oh, I don't have time, or it's too much work. How would you convince a kid these days to stick with reading when they can?
I think I think our world right now is so fast and so like everything you're scrolling, you're just everything's clickbait and things like that. But sometimes if you just make yourself stop, because it's so hard to do, but if you make yourself stop, kind of just get tucked into a book and just fully immerse yourself in that. I think that escapism that you get is like no other, and you kind of can't describe until you do it, and like you get immersed in that world, and you get to experience a completely different world, a completely different character to yourself, and that's amazing.
I feel like the point you made earlier on, that like something like a film, that's the shared point of reference, that you can all have the same experience. But the magic of a book is that you're sort of creating your own experience, and it's your own world, and you can take it at your own pace, and you choose the people, you choose what you see. And although sometimes it can take a bit of time to get into a book, I think when you're in it and you're fully immersed and you have the feeling that you can't put it down, there's no greater joy than that.
It's such both of you make such amazing points, and I think it's the only way to flex your own personal imagination also, and discover something purely for yourself. Because otherwise, when you watch a movie or a TV show, you're being fed somebody else's version of the story. And you can go through life only experiencing other people's versions of the story. And reading is the only way on earth, really, to, I think, make your own story, make your own version in your head and get to know yourself better, I think, also.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited for everyone to get to see you guys become these characters in the School for Good and Evil movie, and it'll be out later this year in the fall. And I'm just so honored that Rosie Graham and Emma Lau got to join me for this fun little conversation. And more importantly, that I get to see you guys in person when all of this stuff kicks off later this year.
I know, I hope so. Thanks so much, Soman. It's been so fun.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so
What a
much.
fun way to start off the Sunday. So, all right, I will see you guys in London soon. And yeah, and to all of you watching, thanks so much. And I hope to see you guys in Texas at the North Texas Teen Book Festival the first weekend in March.